In this video, I'm going to work through a basic example of how to use an execute razor action in your workflows or in your action list for enhancing your low-code development environment. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new action form. So I've got a clean page here. I go to my action form and add that onto my page. Now I've got a blank action form. I'm going to go ahead and create it. So the idea here of the form that we're creating is we're going to create a form where our user goes in and they're able to either enter their name or not enter their name and click a button. And then they'll get a customized greeting based on the fact if they entered their name or if they did not enter their name. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to add a input box. It's just a text box. Okay, and it's going to say, what is your name? Question mark. And we're going to give a custom ID on this box of name. Okay, and that'll be our first field. And then we are going to also have a button on here. That's just going to be called run. And we'll use the default name, and we're not going to add any actions to that right now. And then we're going to have a static text field. And that static text field is just going to be called greeting. And that is where our message is going to be put out to the user. So what we're going to do is we're going to say hello world if the user did not enter in a name. And if they did enter in a name, let's say their name's Bob, we're going to say hello Bob. So we now have our greeting field on there. So we've got three fields now, or two fields. What is your name, the greeting, and the run button. So we're going to switch over to our layout view. We're going to go ahead and organize this a little bit on the screen. Okay, so let's shrink up our name field here. That doesn't need to be very big. And we're going to put our run button next to it, which just says run on it, so it also doesn't need to be too big. We're going to expand the name size out a little bit. Move this over. Give our name question a few extra columns. And put our button in and then drop up our greeting on the left of that. And that looks a bit better there. And so we've got what is your name, we've got where the user can enter their name, and we've got the run button. So it looks like we got the layout there at a reasonable amount so that we can keep continuing. And so the next thing up is coding our button. And so our button should be fairly simple to do. So on our run button, we're going to go down to our action list here. And the first thing we're going to do is add a execute razor, right? And this is going to be, let's name this, generate greeting. Right, and then the other thing we're going to have here is we go under data, update form Ajax. And so this action, we can just put update form on there. There's nothing else we need to do. So the update form Ajax will push our field updates back to the user's screen without doing a full page refresh. So if you're not using that, I encourage you to explore this action. It really enhances the user experience when developing a web page when it's not doing a full post back of the page. So that's how we'll actually get our greeting field to update. So now is the heart of the demo here is the execute razor action. And so we've got the standard fields here, error message, condition. We don't need a condition on this. We do need a script name, which just needs to be a unique name for the script. We've got local variables. We're not going to need to use this right now. But let's say, for instance, you're pulling back database variables that you're referencing with a semicolon. You can drop those in that way. But beyond that, any other token that's in your system, that's in any other token that you have available to you right now is available to you automatically in the Razor code as a variable. So the only obvious reason you need to use the local variables is if for some reason you had a token that couldn't be translated into a variable, like one that has a semicolon in it because it's an entity that you've pulled back to the database or something like that. additional assemblies. So if you have more code libraries that you want to use inside your code, inside this Razor action, then you could reference them there. That's a bit out of scope of this basic demo here. But next up is the code. So first thing we need to do is put a parenthesis block here, and that's what tells the system that this is going to be our code block here. Okay, and so like I said, what we want to do is if the user entered a name, then we want to greet the person with hello and their name. If they didn't enter a name, then we want to go ahead and just have it say hello world. So we're going to go and initialize a variable here. So we're going to call it our greeting variable. And we're just going to start it out with hello world in there. So this is what our greeting is if the user entered nothing. So if we left it just like that, no other code, the only other thing we need to do is outside of the parenthesis block here, we need to actually output what we want the output of our action to be. And so in this case, we want the output of our action to be this greeting variable that we have. So this is using the Razor notation to spit out the value of our greeting variable. And so where that value gets spit out to, in this case, hello world, is in our store result here. And so this is just a standard Plantin app token name that you'd want to put here. So in our case, we're going to call this greeting. And the reason we are calling this greeting is because greeting is the name of our field right here. And so we will populate that back into the token that automatically exists for the greeting field. So there's automatically a greeting token because we have a greeting field. And that means that greeting gets outputted from our action here into the greeting token. And then by the way of the magic of our update form data Ajax action here, it will automatically put that onto the screen. So let's go ahead and give this a try. Let's go ahead and click save. Okay, and we'll do a refresh. So we have what is your name. Now we're going to go ahead and not enter anything in here, and we're going to go ahead and click run. And we've got hello world up on the screen. Now we could also click in or type in David here and go ahead and click run. It's still going to say hello world because we haven't put any logic in there to have it do anything else differently in that Razor token. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do now. But this gives you the basic idea of what's going on here. Our Razor token is populating that variable with hello world, and then we output that to the greeting token, and then the update Ajax action handles updating our screen. Now there is, this is a basic demo example, but there's obviously a more Plantin app friendly way without using a Razor action to do this. And that would be just to use an execute token action. So we also could use right here in the context, create update token, which we could do something very similar. We could put a condition on that to check what the user has inputted and then set the greeting token that way. But that would be the straightforward way to do it using the Plantin app built-in actions. But this is just a great way to give an example of how to use the Razor action itself and to show its power and the various things that you can do with that. So what we need to do is put in our if statement here that's going to do different things based on if the user entered a name or not. So we're going to add an if statement here, put in our if block. Right, and so we automatically have a variable in here named name. So if you look at this, we named this field name, and so its token's name is name. So we will have a name in the background. So just like if you did square brackets name in your regular Plantin app actions, we can reference that same name variable in our code. So for example, let me just delete this for now so we can do a basic example that shows you what's happening here. So we can concatenate the string here. We'll have name.toString. Okay, so I'm going to add a space here. So this is doing the inverse of what we want. So this is always going to output the name field and say hello world after that. And so let me go ahead and flip this around, and we'll have it actually say hello and the name. Right, and so we'll get rid of the world part. we'll add a space there, and it'll say name. So, okay, so here's our token here as a variable in our C# code. And then we do the .toString that just converts that to make sure it is a string for our code. And so now if we click save on that, we'll just do a refresh for good measure, but we shouldn't really have to. And if we go ahead and put in David, we click run, we get hello David. Right, so I've demonstrated both scenarios that we can have. You input a name, it says hello David. You don't input a name, it says hello world. We now need to combine those so that those can both happen at the same time. And so that's what our if statement comes into play. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to our action list, back to the generate greeting. And now I'm going to switch this back to hello world. So our message is always going to default to hello world. But if I go down here, I'm going to do an if statement, and we're going to use a standard C#.NET method called string.isNull or white space. And then we're going to do that same name toString with our parentheses, and then we're going to do a parenthesis block here. And so what this function here, this method off a string is checking, is it's going to look at what comes out of name, and it's going to see if it's empty or if it's just white space, right? So if the user's just entered a space or a tab into that field, it's going to treat it like they entered in nothing, right? And so if that statement comes back true, then we're going to switch our greeting and we're going to set it to, oh, and I need to flip this because we actually want the inverse of that. So if it's not string, or if it's not white space, or if it isn't null, then this is what we want to have happen, right? And so we want it to go ahead and say hello, add our space in there, and then name toString, and then I'm going to go ahead and add an exclamation point at the end. Right, so just to sum that up, we've got our if statement. We're doing the inverse of this method here. So if it's not this, so if it's not null or white space, and we're checking our name token, that's put in as a variable in our C# code here. And if that is the case, then we set our greeting to hello space and then the name that's in our token, exclamation part. And like I said, then we need to dump greeting out into the output, which is what we're doing there. And then we catch it in our greeting token, right? And our greeting token corresponds to our static field here. We named it greeting, which means we automatically have a greeting token. And then we do our update form data, which is an AJAX method, and that's what gets our update onto the screen. So we go ahead and click save there. Okay, and I can do a refresh. Okay, so now if we come in, we click run, we get hello world, and I can go ahead and click in my name. And we click run again, we get hello David, right? If I click, I've hit space and I click run, we're still going to get hello world because we're doing that string.isNull or white space. And so that's it. So there's a very basic example of how to use that razor action, the execute razor action, to do more advanced things in your code that you potentially couldn't do just using the out-of-the-box actions. So you can do various things really at a lower level so that you have all the advanced abilities of building a custom website from scratch, but you get the benefits of PlantinApp on top of everything just to speed up your development environment. Thank you for following along with this video, and I hope you learned a little bit of something from it. The execute razor action is extremely powerful, but you also need to be conscious of how you're using it, because there's a lot easier ways to implement different tasks in the system that would be easier understood by a low-code developer or a no-code developer than using a razor action. But when you need to get down into the nitty-gritty and do something that just isn't available to you in the standard actions, then the execute razor action is a great way to go about doing that. Thanks for watching, and if you click that subscribe button, you'll be able to follow along with all of our tips and tricks videos about PlantinApp, WordPress, Sitefinity, and other software development topics. If you need help with any custom software development, you can reach out on our website and check out the products we have available to help you with your development needs.